机械为世界带来前进的动力。台湾机械产业已在全球占有一席之地，并拥有全球单位面积产值第一的聚落。但在这个瞬息万变的时代，机械还要更进化。除了追求精确和稳定度之外，再将技术与智能互相整合，带来更智慧的管理运用、更全面的产业发展。台湾智慧机械提供世界前进的另一种可能。
台湾精品是给全世界的创新生活提案，人们因此前进美好未来，勇于实现梦想。每一刻，每一天，活出精彩。台湾精品，创新台湾，精彩世界。
机械为世界带来前进的动力。台湾机械产业已在全球占有一席之地，并拥有全球单位面积产值第一的聚落。但在这个瞬息万变的时代，机械还要更进化。除了追求精确和稳定度之外，再将技术与智能互相整合，带来更智慧的管理运用、更全面的产业发展。台湾智慧机械提供世界前进的另一种可能。
台湾精品是给全世界的创新生活提案，人们因此前进美好未来，勇于实现梦想。每一刻，每一天，活出精彩。台湾精品，创新台湾，精彩世界。
机械为世界带来前进的动力。台湾机械产业已在全球占有一席之地，并拥有全球单位面积产值第一的聚落。但在这个瞬息万变的时代，机械还要更进化。除了追求精确和稳定度之外，再将技术与智能互相整合，带来更智慧的管理运用、更全面的产业发展。台湾智慧机械提供世界前进的另一种可能。
our timeline.
各位长官与会的嘉宾，还有企业先进以及在荧幕前收看的观众朋友们，大家午安，大家好，欢迎各位莅临及线上收看由经济部国际贸易局主办、中华民国对外贸易发展协会所执行的打造后疫情时代智慧机械新转机线上国际论坛 The New World for Smart Machines in the Post-COVID-19 Pandemic Era Online Forum。我是今天论坛的司仪 Kathy 吴婉云。目前全球都笼罩在后疫情的时代之下，全球制造业的变化造成人们对于智慧机械的需求有所改变。台湾精品为协助机械及工具机业者超前部署后疫情时代的商机，外贸协会今天特别邀请到来自欧美日等重量级的专业媒体产业资深记者及产业专家，与大家一起线上连线，就其观察其见解，并且进行深度的剖析及分享。在我们活动开始之前呢，欢迎线上各位收看论坛的企业先进们，帮我们按赞、分享，并且订阅台湾精品的 YouTube 频道，还有记得开启小铃铛，台湾精品的最新讯息不漏接。那么在我们论坛开始之前，首先要先邀请我们今天主办单位外贸协会的吴俊泽处长上台为我们致辞，欢迎吴处长。
各位智慧机械企业代表、业界朋友以及本活动所有线上的参与者，大家好。是不是可以允许我先用简单的英文跟我们今天的3位讲师先打个招呼？Mr. Shu Yasumi from Japan News Digest, Mr. Benedikt Hofmann from Machine Market Magazine Germany, and the President of the Association for Manufacturing Technology, Mr. Douglas Woods from United States.Thank you all for sharing your insights today with our machine tool manufacturers. Please allow me to say some words in Chinese to our online participants. 本人仅代表外贸协会欢迎各位线上今天收看我们打造后疫情时代的智慧机械新转机这个线上国际论坛。外贸协会接受经济部国际贸易局委托执行台湾产业形象广宣计划，感谢贸易局的指导以及产业界的支持跟参与。新冠肺炎延烧到今天仍然不见止息。那工具机产业在这一波的疫情受创非常的深，那恐怕是比过去金融海啸跟 SARS 更长。但是透过这个事件，我们看到了工具机业界齐心协力，透过筹组口罩国家队。彰显出整个业界放下竞争团队的这种合作精神，然后也显现出整个工具机产业本质上强健的一个体质跟扎实的基本功。不过面对新冠肺炎这场硬战呢，包括国内的这个工具机产业在内的所有台湾机械业者，应该怎么样如何因应这个冲击呢？我们知道，随着全球化的发展，让各国的这种经济交流活动越来越密切，不可控的因素也越来越多。因此，类似这种突发性的这种黑天鹅事件，我想以后也应该是会层出不穷。那这波疫情呢，看起来其实是危机，其实也是转机。那恰好让我们的这个机械业者可以趁这个空档，检视我们的一个体质跟未来的一个方向，做下一波挑战的准备。那包括我们的整个产品的结构，我们市场的一个布局，还有我们内部的这个人员培训跟资源的配置等等。那台湾精品为了协助我们国内的业者更进一步了解疫情后的全球工具机跟机械产业的趋势，我们今天邀请到了来自欧洲、德国的、美国的、日本以及这些重量级的专业媒体的总编辑跟产业专家，就他们的观察跟见解进行深度剖析。能够希望能够分享第一手的全球市场的趋势 让我们业界能够知道整个未来的一个市场走向。那这波疫情虽然造成了整个实体活动停摆，但是也加速我们机械业者在产品行销跟售后服务的营运模式整个重新的一个思考。那以往我们业界或许对于整个这些像比较新的 AR、VR 这些虚拟技术跟整个这些行销的手法并不是非常的一个积极。那这波疫情刺激之下，我们看到非常多的这些业者原来本来打算说花3年慢慢来的这样的一个计划呢，现在是希望能够在1年里面就导入，那加速整个数位转型的发展。那这方面我想是一个非常可喜的一个现象。那最后我想向所有线上参与这个活动的贵宾、业界先进致上最高的敬意我们将持续推广，让更多国外的这些目标对象知道我们台湾的机械产品跟解决方案，并且带入国际化的观点，让业界先进能够相互学习成长。在此预祝整个活动圆满成功，也敬祝大家身体健康、事业亨通。谢谢大家，谢谢。
谢谢吴处长，请吴处长呢在我们台前这边留步录的荧幕，还有呢电视荧幕，再跟我们今天的讲者打声招呼。Today we are very honored to invite Mr. Su Yasumi from Japan News Digest, Mr. Benedikt Hofmann from Germany Machine Market Magazine, and the president of the Association for Manufacturing Technology, Mr. Douglas K. Woods, here to share with us their insights regarding the machine tools industry. Now we are very delighted to invite all of our participants to look forward and say hi together to our speakers through the online screen with our executive director, Mr. Mark Wu. Hello, good morning. Okay, now we're going to have a group photo together, so please look at the camera in the front. Okay, look at the camera in the front. Let's have a group photo together. 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more. Okay, one more. Smile. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. 谢谢吴处长，请吴处长呢先行回座。有鉴于2020年呢，全球受到疫情的影响，智慧机械呢也受到了全新的挑战。那么本次的跨国线上论坛，外贸协会十分荣幸邀请到全球最顶尖的机械强国代表，包括德国 MM 杂志总主编的 Mr. Benedikt Hofmann， 美国机械制造技术协会的 Mr. Douglas K. Woods 会长，以及日本株式会社生产财杂志取缔役常务暨主编的八角秀先生等3位业界的代表，来跟各位分享他们怎么看待呢目前的德国、美国、日本的情况还有商机。那么首先我们邀请到的是呢日本生产财杂志取缔役常务主编的八角秀先生，要来跟我们分享日本智慧机械产业大未来 The Future and the Needs of Japan's Manufacturing Industry。日本生产财杂志创刊于1964年，是日本金属制造业的领导杂志。他们专门分析日本与全球的金属加工市场趋势，并且呢报道最新的制造技术，采访日本国内领导厂商的管理思维与企业发展的策略，并且讨论呢产品技术还有行销策略。同时也是日本名古屋机电展 MECT 与机器人科技展 Robot Technology Japan 的主办单位。八角秀主编今天将为我们介绍日本机械产业的第一手资讯，还会透露台湾厂商的利基在哪里哦。To begin with, we are pleased to welcome the board member and editor-in-chief from Japan News Digest, Mr. Su Yasumi, to deliver his speech. Let's now welcome Mr. Su Yasumi. Mr. Su Yasumi, can you hear my voice? Yes?
Well,
okay. The floor is yours.
okay. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk to you. Okay. I'd like to say thanks to Tetora and Mr. Wood first. I am Shu Yasumi. Yes, well, okay. Good. Okay. I am Shu Yasumi, board member and editor-in-chief of News Digest Publishing. The theme of my presentation is the future and needs of Japan's manufacturing industry today. So next, please. This is the table of contents. The first one, the introduction for myself. And the second one, current status of Japanese machine tool related equipment market. And the third one, the final step, is the highlights of Japanese cutting-edge manufacturing technologies. Okay, next, please. 1.1, who I am. I am Shu Yasumi, as I said, the board member and editor-in-chief of News Digest Publishing, Japan, and I'm Master of Engineering from Nagoya Institute of Technology, Japan, and I'm Bachelor of Arts, Economics, and Texas A&M University, United States. Okay, next, please. But, 1.2, the who we are, the News Digest Publishing is proud to be the leading trade magazine published in the worldwide metalworking industry. We're publishing 3 magazines at the same time. The first one is Seisanzai, the production equipment marketing magazine, a monthly journal about factory automation industry since 1964, and 64. I'm sorry. We have a history of 56 years, I guess. And the second one is Seisanzai Japan, English online news site since 2018. We have a kind of 2.5 years ago we started it. And the last one, the Robot Digest online, is a new online news site about robotics and the automation system since 2018. We have a history of 2 years, I guess. Next, please. The 1.2, who we are. News Digest also organizes a manufacturing technology show, Mechatronics Technology Japan, bi-yearly, so every 2 years. Like the last one was 2019. The next one's gonna be in 2021 falls. It's the MEC is the largest industrial trade show held in odd number years in Japan, so featuring the more than 400 exhibitors and 90,000 visitors at the same time. So I guess that we can open such kind of a trade show under COVID-19, but I'm still not sure it's such a lot of people gathering at the place. Okay, next, please. Okay, let's go to the second step, the current status of Japan and Japanese machine tool and related equipment market. Okay, next, please. Okay. 2.1, peak-to-peak analysis of machine tool market. The graph is about Japanese machine tool order 2020 August. It's kind of complicated graph, so let me explain a little about it. The vertical axis, the left side, means the percentage of the order comparing to the last peak order. So it starts from the 160% to 10%, but every peak starts from recognize 100%. Okay. The horizontal axis means month, that's from 1 to 86 months. Okay, so the line start with the peak of order as 100% and move downward month by month. Please see the thick red line. The last peak was March 2018 starts from 100%, so the machine tool order in downtrend for almost 30 months. And the order volume is this August was just 37.2% to the last big volume. It could be said that business slowed down start 2 years before the COVID-19, that because of the trade conflict between U.S. and China. The graph, you see the graph also contains the other colorful 8 lines. Those are almost 40 years history of Japanese machine tool industry. So we had 8 times the pair of the peak on the bottom. The learning from the history, the machine tool business has some kind of a tendency. That is a business downwardly moved from 2 years or 2.5 years from the peak to bottom, and then moving upward, taking 3 to 4 years to the next peak. This could be called cyclical. That is a machine tool business in Japan in the 9th downward trend in this 40 years from 1980s. So if COVID-19 didn't happen, I guess the business would already be in an uptrend from this spring and summer, I guess. Next, please. This is 2.2, 30 years. I made a mistake on a 40 years history of a machine tool market. It's a graph about a machine tool order in quarterly base and a 3-month base. The machine tool business in the 8th downtrend, as I said, in this 40 years from 1980 to 2020. That means, as I said, 8 peaks you can see the 40 years. Please see the sharp decline 2009. That is, as you know, the global financial crisis. Before that happened, the domestic order you can see is a larger or almost same level with a foreign order. But after the financial crisis in 2009, the foreign order always been higher than domestic order. That is because of the development of global economy, especially in the intensive investment in China. However, at the business, in downtrends, the gap between domestic and foreign order getting eliminated. This trend might be caused by the shrink of the global economy. Next, please. 2.3 at the bottom out or upswing by area. So this graph is indicating the foreign machine tool order by area. Okay. North America, Europe, and Asia. China is the biggest market, so it indicates the black line. You can see it. Please see the text box up middle of the graph. Seeing the trend of those couple of months, Asia, including China, is getting better, comparing with around April, May, and June. That might mean the bottom out and getting in the uptrend on COVID-19. We hope it. Next, please. 2.4, the getting out from the bottom, the question. And now let's see, the graph is about order of 8 major machine tool companies. It's September 2020. Unfortunately, MESEC and DMG Mori does not disclose the domestic production amount. But you can see the Okuma, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Shiba Ura, used to be in a Toshiba machine, and Tsugami, OKK, J-Tech, Makino. It's all seeing the better better signs comparing with this spring or early summer. They guess we almost all other all machine tool builders in the recovery cycle. Next, please. Okay. Okay, that's 2.5. That means that is the domestic demand of 8 major machine tool companies, as I said. Just focusing on a domestic order of them. That means the domestic investment of industry like automotive, electronics, aircraft, building, machine, medical, and so on. But it's all of them are still weak. Getting better, but it's still weak. Next, please. Uh, 2.6. Foreign demands are back. Also, the recovery from COVID-19 is obvious comparing with their domestic demand. Yeah, it seems better than domestic market. The next, please. Uh, 2.7, decoupling of machine tool and robot production. Yes. It's a graph about the production of machines and equipment, some others, industrial robot, dia mold, injection molding, bearing, measuring devices. Precede the production of industrial robot, the largest one. By the time around 2015, the production of machine tool and the robot had been coupling since the both of them had majorly used in the same market. I mean, automotive and electronics. Also, domestic use are larger than comparing with nowadays. But today, 70 or 80% of robots are exported and are used in various industries. Almost largely in China. So it is said that machine tool and robot are decoupling year by year. Next, please. That is a 2.8. Tool consumption indicates car production. The production of automobile hit the bottom in May and getting recovered gradually. Also, the production of carbide tool is getting better. Next, please. 2.9, the worst market condition in these 10 years now. JMTBA, Japan Machine Tool Builders Association, had a press conference on September 30th. And they said downwardly adjusted the forecast of machine tool order in 2020 from 1,200 billion yen to 850 billion yen. That is the first time in these 10 years to be under 1,000 billion yen. That is majorly caused by COVID-19. And Mr. Yukio Imura, the chairman of JMTBS, said, let me read it. The largest market, automotive, is still weak. The trend of their investments are shifting from hardware to software. That is a big risk, he said. But at the last press conference held last week, JMTB commented the order from China is really strong now. That's a really good sign. We can. Okay, please go to the next, please. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the last step, the highlights of Japanese cutting-edge manufacturing technologies. Okay, next, please. Yeah, there, 3.1, too many keywords. As you know, we have really so much of keywords in a high mix, low volume production is really, really important these days because the customers' tendency is varies. So the all makers in any kind of industry has to make various goods. And additive manufacturing, also known as 3D printers and digital twin, is really highly sophisticated simulation and case. Is a really, as you know, there's really a big change in automotive industry. Case stands for a connectivity, autonomous, shared and electricity, and AI, artificial intelligence, cloud services, electric vehicle, automated process integration. Process integration is really important for machine tool. That means having two or more abilities in a machine, like a lathe and a machining center, and probably the grinding and others in the machine. So also, the 5-axis machining center is recognized as a process integration at the same time, easy to use. Turnkey is also the very important keywords. That means that setting up the machine and the system before installing to the customer's factory, make them ready to use. So I forgot to put a DX, digital transformation, this here, but anyway, it's next please, okay? So that's all about automation. So you have to focus on how to automate your customer's factory. Okay, next please. Okay, let's see the 3.2 highly automated factory here. Okuma, the leading machine tool builder, you might know names its factories as a dream site. This is a picture of the DS3, the third dream site. So they had 9,600 square meters with just 20 people working, just 20 in a factory. It's amazing. So when I visited this factory at the last time, I spent there 1 hour and a half, but nobody comes around us. I couldn't see anyone else. That's amazing. So it seems like a very big laboratory for testing the machine and the automation systems. It's amazing. And this is the most automated factory I've ever seen. And there are a lot of intelligent production cells. The production cell means a machine tool with a robot and automated. And then there are a lot of machines, hybrid multitasking machines. That a machine tool has a lathe, a machining center, grinding, then sometimes laser for heat treatment. The testing and the amazing rate, they recognize 5 parts per month as mass production. 5 parts per month. So they make the 5 parts for automation. It's amazing one. Okay, next please. This 3.3 AI for amount running. DMG Mori used as artificial intelligence for chip disposal. It's kind of complicated one. So how to remove the chip is very fundamental, but the most important factor for automation. As you know, chips sometimes stuck between a workpiece and the cutting tool or workpiece to the work holders, or sticking inside a machine and break it down sometimes. And so DMG Mori used artificial intelligence to solve this problem. At first, the vision sensor detect a place where many of chips, and a second to analyze an amount of place of chips. The next, the system automatically select the best way to clean up the chip. Finally, the system wash it off and chips with coolant. This is an option adapted to some horizontal machining center, and the price is 2,500,000 Japanese yen. That is almost equals to 700,000 new Taiwan dollar. It's a kind of expensive, but it's really good for automation. Okay, next please. The 3.4 collaborative robot. Many of industrial robot builders release a collaborative robot. Sometimes it's a cobot. That is the really big game changer of automation industry, I guess. And a cobot is used for simple and convenient automation. In the past, robot is majorly used for automation only for mass production. So the system must be large, must be very large and expensive, isolated from human by fence. But you don't need to isolate a robot from people using cobots. So Taiwanese take my robot, the big picture up there. It's really in Japan the popular cobot brand recognized in Japanese market since its pre-installed vision sensor system is very good one and a competitive price. Okay, next please. Okay. Oh. Okay. Next, please. Okay, can see. That is 3.5 useful tool, digital twin. Digital twin is also the game-changing technology. Wondering what it is, but in short, digital twin is a very sophisticated simulation. You can handle the machine tool in virtual space. The picture is about the MESIX or mesothelin twins. You can duplicate your factory in digital. You can minimize your real working in a factory, preparing various digital setups in the virtual space. The MESIX use the system by themselves for against the COVID-19 effect. They divided their tasks in factory into two, for virtual and for real. And they work in a virtual space as much as possible. And a mesothelin twin at the office or home, you can set up and prepare for actual real manufacturing. That means to minimize the number of people in real factory. That's a really good trial, I guess. Okay, next please. Okay, 3.6 engineering and integration skill required in the future. We have surveyed JMTDA, Japan Machine Tool Distributors Association, the dealer of machine tool in Japan, this October. The question was, what is the most important factor during next 10 years? They answered engineering and or system integration skill. 66% of people answered. The second question is, what kind of action are you going to do? And they said, intend to collaborate with others, 88%. So they are focusing on, that's all about automation, as I said. Okay, next, please. Yes, this is wrap up. The first current status of Japanese manufacturing industry is not very good. It is unclear if they are getting out from the bottom, but it's getting better month by month. The second one, that the investment by automobile industry is shifting from hardware to software. The third one, that there are many kinds of cutting-edge technologies, but they're all about automation. Next, please. Okay, that's all of my presentation. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Suyasumi, for sharing with us your insights regarding the machine tools industry in Japan. 感谢八角兽主编带来精彩的市场分析。各位正在收看直播的企业先进，如果您有任何问题想问我们的日本讲师，欢迎您呢扫描荧幕下方的 QR code 来进行提问。So, Mr. Suyasumi, I would like to ask you some questions. In your presentation, you mentioned that the machine tool industry and the related equipment market have been greatly impacted by COVID-19 and even by the US and China trade war, causing the forecast of MT order to drop about 30% in 2020. This is from 1,200 billion yen to 850 billion yen, which is the first time in 10 years to be under 1,000 billion yen. So, do you see any positive signals, and will the industry recover in 2021?
Okay, positive sign. If the Chinese market is really strong this couple of months. IT devices like a personal computer, tablet, smartphone, also the automobile and EV, the electric vehicles are good condition. Or many major players are investing more and more these couple of months. That's really good sign. But the matter is how long it lasts, how long. So it depends on the Chinese government and its financial policy. So we have to consider the trade conflict will be going on no matter who is going to win the presidential election in the United States, Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, who wins. It doesn't matter. The trade conflict is gonna be going on. So Taiwanese and Japanese companies have to take care both country in political and the market industrial phases in both ways. And really tough time, but tough time always bring an opportunity, kind of opportunity, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answers. I also would like to ask you one more question. We all know that the outbreak of COVID-19 has affected the supply chains greatly, causing supply disruption. How do you see the changes in the deployment of the manufacturer's production network?
Deployment is a really tough question. Nobody has a correct answer on such kind of questions. Yes, but COVID-19 caused very big change of global supply. Many of global markets are reviewing their strategies for supply chain management, how to make them very shorter as much as possible. And there's also geopolitical uncertainty. The Frank Knight, the economist from the United States, defined the differences between risk and uncertainty. Risk is a matter of probability, so you can say that how many percent it's going to be happen. But uncertainty, on the other hand, is a very rare case. Like the conflict between the U.S. and China is a kind of rare case. So you cannot explain it in percent how many percent what's going to be happen. It's difficult. So deployment of factory is used to be the risk factor before COVID or before trade conflict. But after then, now it's kind of a matter of uncertainty. It's a kind of a gamble to have a factory. But I say the safest way is to have to factory inside of Taiwan and export them to China, to US, and India, Europe, and anywhere else from Taiwan, I guess. The basic idea of globalism is changing, so now and the local procurement of each makers are changing too, I guess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suyasumi, for your explanation and your answers. 非常感谢八角秀主编的回应。那么紧接着我们要邀请的是德国 MM 杂志总主编 Mr. Benedikt Hofmann 来跟我们分享疫情爆发加速德国机械产业数位转型 An outlook on the further development of the Germany industry. Is COVID-19 an accelerator for digitalization in Germany?我们都知道，台湾与德国皆具世界市场领导地位的出口型经济体，双方具有高度的互补关系，可提供世界级的工业 4.0 解决方案。因此，今天特别邀请到德国 MM Machine Market 欧洲专业机械媒体来剖析德国机械产业在疫情期间的转变，并介绍台湾企业该如何切入当地的机械制造业的供应链及提供当地市场的最新消息。Next up, we're pleased to welcome the Editor-in-Chief from MM Machine Market, Mr. Benedikt Hofmann, to share with us his speech. Let's now hand the floor to Mr. Hofmann.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Taitra and Mr. Wu for inviting me to speak today to you. I'm very happy to do so. Best greetings from Germany. I'm going to talk about the German machine-making industry and COVID-19 as an accelerator for the industry. Next chart, please. So we can skip that as well, and then we will come to my agenda where I'm going to show you shortly what I am talking about. So the next chart, please. So first of all, I will give you a short introduction of myself so you know who is talking here and who is presenting these things. Then we have a close look on the state of the machine-making industry in Germany, because there are a couple of things that we have to look at that were also happening prior to COVID-19 that will be important for the future as well. We'll have a look at the challenges and changes in the industry and, of course, the chances as well. Then we will have a detailed look on how COVID-19 changed the view on digitalization in Germany, which it really had a great impact there. We will look into that. One important thing that came out of this whole situation is the topic resilience, which is one of the largest topics in Germany right now. We will have a look at that as well. And then we will have a look at the most important areas for digitalization in the German machine making and machine tool industry. And as well, we will have a short excursus on Gaia X, which is a digital European infrastructure that might affect the future of the industry as well. Next chart, please. So who am I? As you already heard, my name is Benedikt Hofmann, and I am Editor-in-Chief of Maschinenmarkt, as well as ETMM, which is European Tool and Mold Making Magazine. I have 10 years experience in trade journalism in different areas of the industry, and the topics I worked in include coating and converting, organic and printed electronics, logistics, manufacturing industries, IT, and of course digitalization. I also headed the PR department of a company specialized on software and solutions for industrial applications. Next chart, please. So first of all, we will have a look at the state of the machine-making industry currently. Next chart, please. So this shows the development of the gross domestic product in Germany from 2013 to 2020. In this case, we will have the first quarter of 2020. Here you can see that COVID-19 really brought one of the biggest drops in gross domestic product. Right now, I was able to get even more recent numbers that include the second quarter as well, which shows a much larger drop coming out of the second quarter. Here we will have a decline not only of 2.2%, but 11.3% in the gross domestic product in Germany, which means that those are larger losses than we have seen in the economic crisis of 2008 and 2009, which shows us that the COVID-19 really has a dramatic effect on the German industry, an effect that really is among the most negative effects we have seen in recent history, dating back to the early 2000s, dating back even to 1990 and the German unification. Next chart, please. So what we see is that the manufacturing industry is just as hard hit as the overall German economy. We can see that, for example, in the index of orders in manufacturing, which we will see on the next chart. So next chart, please. This is showing an index of new orders in manufacturing and how that developed for machinery, equipment, and so on. You can see the development here. The most recent numbers I just got recently, which aren't in the presentation here because I got it too shortly, show us that they were rising again in the last months. So more orders coming in, but honestly, I don't think that this trend will hold up. As we just yesterday, the German government announced that there will be new lockdown measures in Germany as COVID-19 infection numbers are rising again. And from our experience from the first months of 2020, we can be pretty sure that there will be another slump in order numbers as well. So and we're pretty sure that the rise that we were seeing in the past months will be done pretty shortly, and we will have to see how things evolve there. Next chart, please. But COVID-19 isn't the only thing that is affecting the German industry as a whole. There were warning signs prior to Corona and COVID-19 that we have seen and that we have to take a look on as well. So in the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, there were already warning signs that the growth of the past years would not go on. To explain that a little further, so in the last past 10 years, industry and economic numbers in Germany saw a steady rise. So there were almost no downturns, just a steady rise in economic numbers. Which, of course, couldn't last forever. And in the end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, we already saw the first warning signs. Next chart, please. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, for example, has a machine-making index, and that predicted a decline in revenue of 4.2% for 2020, even prior to people knowing that COVID-19 would be a thing in 2020. Next chart, please. The German associations of VDMA, VDW, and ZWEI also predicted a sustained economic downturn in the German industry at the start of 2020. So those are the biggest associations in Germany for machine making, machine tools especially, and electronics and automation. So the numbers these associations tell us usually are pretty accurate, and they were already talking about a decline in the German industry at the start of 2020, also prior to knowing that COVID-19 would come and affect the industry. Next chart, please. So here are a couple of obstacles companies and managers saw in the German industry prior to Corona that were obstacles to business growth. So these are topics we will have to talk about as well, because some of them just don't go away, and some of them will still affect the development of the German industry even after the COVID-19 situation. So one thing the company stated that was a current obstacle for business growth was weak demand in products. So we already saw a decline in order there. We saw a decline in a demand for products produced by German companies. Then there is a point that might not be as important in the future after COVID-19 than it was before, but we still have to take a look at, which is a shortage of skilled workers. So that is a topic that has been pretty big in Germany in the past 10 years, as the employment rate was so big that many companies had problems getting the skilled workers they needed because there weren't just any more on the market. So that was a real obstacle for companies to grow, as they just didn't have the manpower to do the things they needed to do. And this might get a little less important after COVID-19, as we saw employment rates drop a little. But still we will see effects of that later in our sight into the future. One topic that won't go away for sure is increasing cost pressure. So there was a growing demand in products for a lower price, which always is hard to do for German companies, caused by high wages that are paid to skilled workers especially. And then, of course, one topic that we see still evolve, and that my predecessor from Japan already talked about as well, are political developments abroad, which is a topic that might get even more important after the COVID-19 situation, and maybe as well depending on the vote in the United States. So what does that mean? The political developments abroad, of course, that means trade tensions that are looming around the world. That means that the globalization isn't going forward as it used to be, and that supply chains in many situations aren't what they used to be. Of course, the problems between the United States and China as two of the biggest markets in the world are pretty important for Germany, which is, as many of you will know, a country that is greatly focused on exports and selling products to countries abroad. Next chart, please. So to these challenges, we see something that COVID-19 already is bringing to the table for the future. And that, of course, is a dramatic decline in demand that we've seen in my chart prior. We see much less orders. And as of now, we don't know how these order numbers will get back up in the coming months and years. A big topic that we will talk about later as well, of course, are the faults in the supply chain that we've seen, and that has brought big problems to a lot of companies in Germany, as they were reliant on global supply chains that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Restrictions on travel and residence are, of course, a big problem as well. Many companies had big issues with getting their skilled workers, their managers, and so on to their site internationally. They couldn't get to where they needed to be to work and do their business. So that was a big problem. And that is a situation that we will see how it develops and how it will affect the industry in the future as well, as we'll have to see how that gets back. So global travel, how that gets back. And a very special problem that is caused by COVID-19, of course, are customers' liquidity bottlenecks. That means the big problem that products may be produced already and even delivered to the customer, like big machines or something like that. And the customer is not able to pay for them, as the company got into problems due to drop in demand to COVID-19. So that is a big problem that we will see how it unfolds in the coming months. Next chart, please. So there are something more things that we have to look into, and those numbers unfortunately aren't too recent, but of course these questionnaires always take a little, but they give us a little hint on what we see and what development we can expect. So in PricewaterhouseCoopers' latest questionnaire that ranged from February 6th to March 2nd, 2020, machine-making companies predicted the average decrease in sales due to the coronavirus to be around 9.9%. We can safely predict that this number would be much higher if the questionnaire would be done right now. So we can predict much higher numbers there. That is for sure. And according to a questionnaire by the VDW, so the German Association for the Machine Tool Industry, recently released order intake in the German machine tool industry fell by 25% compared to the same period of the previous year. We saw those numbers getting a little better in the past weeks and months, but unfortunately, I fear that we will see a decline there again in the current situation as we see a second wave of COVID-19 looming in Germany right now, which is why the government has released new measures that I told you about earlier. Next charts, please. So where there are challenges, of course, there are chances as well, chances for the industry to develop further, to get better, and to get onto a new stage and be able to work with problems better in the future. One of the big chances for the industry, of course, is the topic of today, which is digitalization on all fronts. So digitalization is generally seen as a way to increase productivity and establish new business models. We will talk about that later as well, but I want to give a short forecast on that. So new business models means that selling a machine will not be the only business model for machine makers in the future. So there can be machine as a service business models, there can be remote service business models and all of that. And all of those new business models will become possible due to digitalization. This is why the next chart please, is getting closer onto that topic. So it's consensus in German manufacturing industry that the new business models are an important part of future strategies. This includes, of course, machines as a service, as I said, but many other business models as well. So the German machine making industry as well is now seeing that data is one of the big topics of the future and can be a business model in itself, as Google, for example, already is showing. Next chart, please. So another chance for the manufacturing industry, of course, is the opening up of new markets. So new and fastly growing markets as the aerospace industry were seen as growth sector, for example, for the manufacturers of machine tools. This we have to see a little bit skeptical now, not only due to COVID-19, which might have a short effect on the aerospace industry, for example, but due to the environmental movement that we see pretty strong in Germany, for example. Some of you might have heard of Fridays for Future, which is a big thing in Europe. So young people going out on the streets trying to reach environmental goals for a new way of life, which also includes less travels around the world because of its bad influence on the environment. Next charts, please. So now we will get to the main topic of my talk today, which of course is how COVID-19 changed the view on digitalization in Germany, which is a pretty important effect, as we'll see in the next chart, if you just change that, please. As German companies used to be pretty cautious concerning digitalization. That has a number of reasons. There were reservations about going digital, which in big parts is caused by a fear of data security. So having your own data in your own hands is a pretty big topic in Germany as a society, just as well as in the industry. So privacy issues are a much bigger issue here than in many different countries. You can maybe track that back to the German history, which just had a number of bad occasions where governments used data about people to oppress them and so on. So privacy and data security is a really, really big topic for Germany as a society and as an industry. Another big topic is the fear for process security. So many German companies, many German machine making and machine tool companies have pretty good processes as they are now on a more analog kind of way, and they're working good, and they all fear for problems in those processes that they fear might come if they digitalize those, but this view is changing, which we will see shortly. And of course there is a fear of dependence on IT companies. So German companies really take pride in having the skill for their products in their company, and depending on the skills their own workers have, which much higher digitalization, there will be no way than to trust outside companies in this regard. So that is a point that is really important to a lot of companies here in Germany. Next chart, please. So, but how did COVID-19 lead to a change of mind here? So the first COVID-19 lockdown in spring 2020 caused serious problems for many production sites. Next chart, please. We saw collapsing supply chains. Next chart. Workers were not able to get to work. Next chart, please. And the IT infrastructure of a lot of companies was not ready for remote work in a bigger scale. So companies really were shown for the first time that the processes they were taking in high regards also had their limits in a situation as right now, that they were seeing that they were highly dependent on having people in their production site. They were highly dependent on individual workers in their production site, and they were highly dependent on pretty or not really flexible supply chains, which is a topic that we will get into in a couple of minutes. Next chart, please. So this is a questionnaire by the personal computer manufacturing company Dell, which is the Digital Transformation Index. This chart is showing us the change on a global scale. So you can see that the number of digital evaluators in a global scale has increased significantly, and the number of digital adopters has increased as well. That means a lot of more companies are now seeing the digitalization in their company as a big point for the future. Digitalization is just getting a much bigger topic. Now to the next chart, please. This is showing us the development in Germany, which shows us that the numbers are almost on the same scale as they are globally, which is really a big change, as they used to be behind global developments in their view on digitalization. So you can see here already that the view on the digitalization in the companies has changed dramatically in the past weeks due to the COVID-19 situation. Next chart, please. And the big reason for that is a new trend that arose in the German industry that is right now maybe the most important keyword here, which is resilience. Resilience for the industry. Next chart, please. So what does resilient mean? Technical systems are described as resilient if they maintain the required system performance even when internal or external failures and malfunctions occur. So that means we're talking about production systems that are able to withstand problems much better than other production systems or the production systems of the parts, which we've seen in the COVID-19 crisis that are not very strong when it comes to crisis on a global scale, when it comes to problems with getting to work as a whole and so on. Next chart, please. So ways to achieve resilience are here are some points that are considered to bring resilience to company, and that means distributed systems, so less focus on a single areas there. Redundancy in planning, so that means not only one way to achieve something, but having fallbacks. Adaptive systems, adaptive programming as well, of course, and control using artificial intelligence, which already shows you that one thing, of course, is being less dependent on actual human workers, but using the chances digitalization and new system bring here. Next chart, please. So then it is not really a surprise that digitalization is seen as one of the most important means on the road to resilience by German companies. Next chart. And here we see clear effects of COVID-19 in the German industry. So now 3/4 of all companies now have a strategy for digitalization and digitization, which is a big change for the future. For large companies, the number is even 96%. Yeah. In machine making, plant engineering, and the automotive industry, the number is just a little under that. So we see really a big rise here. This is according to a survey by the Digitalization Association, Bitkom, which is really an important source for insight here in Germany. Next chart, please. And this shows us that the willingness to invest in digitalization increased from 57% to 70% in Germany, which is really important. Next chart, please. So now we see some of the most important areas for digitalization that are seen for the future, which of course first is the most easy one, which means home office and remote work for the companies. Next chart, please. Then we get more into the industrial topics. So this means predictive maintenance is one of the important topic. Next chart. Remote services, of course, are important. So to be less dependent on the actual production side, being less dependent on people getting there. And another big important topic is on the next chart, please show that, which of course is artificial intelligence. So there's a number of projects and research topics in Germany depending artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can have a positive effect on the German manufacturing industry. Next chart, please. One topic I already talked about, of course, is the as-a-service business models, which means, for example, not selling a machine to the customer, but renting it to the customer. So the customer has more flexibility with the machine that the company is using and so on. And the machine making company, of course, has an asset that is bringing revenue for a much longer time than just selling it as a whole. The next chart, please. And of course, we get back to a term that we are talking about since many years, which is not surprising, as it was first coined in Germany, which of course means Industry 4.0, which is the connected and digital industry that is said to be much more reliable and much more resilient than maybe Industry 2.0 that we are in most cases still in right now, of course, with the exception of some project factories and some highly automated factories that we're seeing around the world. But still, this is the big topic going into the future, still Industry 4.0. So the connecting of machines, the getting knowledge from data that we're getting there, and making remote services and new business models possible in the end. Next chart, please. So here is, as the last part of my presentation, I have a short excursus on Gaia X, which is a topic maybe not all of you have heard about already, and which I would like to introduce to you, which because it might become important in the future when doing business in Germany, especially when offering digital products for the industry. So Gaia X is a project for the development of an efficient and competitive, secure and trustworthy data infrastructure in Europe. So a couple of European companies have come to the conclusion then in terms of digital and data infrastructure, Europe has fallen behind other areas in the world, namely, of course, the United States and Asia, and wants to catch up with the project Gaia X. Next chart, please. The main countries that are behind this project, and this is why I included it in my presentation, of course, are Germany and France, together with other partners and science and companies. They are working on this Gaia X infrastructure. Next chart, please. So the digital ecosystem is supposed to ensure that companies and business models from Europe can be competitive in the future. And this means if you want to do business there in the future, it is, of course, important for you to get some knowledge on this digital infrastructure and know what is going on and how it might affect the work you're doing here. So with that, I have come to the conclusion for my short presentation here. And of course, I'm open for questions if there are some questions left. Thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hofmann, for your insightful opinions regarding to the machine tools industry in Germany. 谢谢 Mr. Hofmann 主编呢带来精彩的市场分享。线上收听直播的企业先进，如果您对刚才德国讲师的分享有任何问题，欢迎呢把握时间扫描下方的 QR code 来提问。So, Mr. Hofmann, I would like to ask you some questions. You mentioned in your presentation that the willingness in Germany to invest in digitalization increased from 57% to 70%, which means that digital technology has huge potential. So, which particular industry do you think will have opportunities for Taiwanese companies to go into Germany in 2021?
My answer might surprise some, but of course, we have to talk about the machine-making industry itself here. So we saw numbers dropping there pretty bad. I talked about that due to the outbreak of COVID-19, but still machine making plays a central role for Germany's economic wealth, and there will be programs to make it work again and to offer money to those companies to get back up working. And of course, those are the companies that really need machines as well, machines to build their machines, and that will look into much more digitalized machines, which I know that Taiwanese companies are pretty far ahead and have really modern machines there with a lot of digital capabilities, which will be greatly appreciated, I think, in the future. And another area which will continue to grow and which has been growing over the last years, of course, is the medical technology area, which has a big demand on highly sophisticated, for example, machines, and which will have a highly demand on much more digitalized machines and services there. So medical technology will be the second market, I think, will be important here in the future, and I have big opportunities for Taiwanese companies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hofmann, for your response. I have another question for you, and that is, the outbreak of COVID-19 has affected the supply chains greatly, causing supply disruption. So how do you see the changes in the deployment of the manufacturer's production network?
Yeah, honestly, I think COVID-19 might mark an end to the fully globalized supply chains, especially in production business. So a lot of companies here are starting to look for suppliers in new supply chains, maybe even suppliers that are closer to them, or more suppliers, just to not be so reliant on a single source for their parts and their materials. So of course we have seen a big shift to China as a supplier in the past years, but of course the situation has brought some much more skeptical look on this single supply chain that has been built up there, and companies are looking to be a lot more diverse. They're looking for new countries, for example, to do business with. And of course, one thing that might be important in the future is a more strict evaluation of countries and companies that people are working with. So they will demand a resilient approach to business making there, so they can be sure their supplies will come. And I see one thing we might see is a more decentralized production. So maybe away from the big one company with a one plant producing everything, but having a lot of smaller production sites around the world, closer to the actual customers and closer to the own suppliers. So you're not dependent on one or just a few supply chains for your production, but be much more versatile there in case if there's a problem on one side of the world, you still have production and supply capabilities on another side of the world. So I think that will be the development that we will see in the coming years.
Thank you once again, Mr. Hofmann, for your detailed answers.
Thank you very much.
响后疫情时代，美国智慧机械新趋势及商机 The U.S. market trend and opportunities of smart machine in the post-COVID-19 era. 美国是台湾工具机出口的第二大市场国。虽然中美贸易及新冠肺炎冲击到台湾机械及工具机的产业，但让分散生产基地成为全球的共识。市场刚性需求仍在，此时是台湾企业放眼国际、重新调整策略的最好时机。尤其美国政府持续提倡 Made in USA， 预期对于精密机械设备的需求与日俱增。本次我们特别邀请美国机械制造技术协会 Mr. Douglas K. Woods 会长介绍美国智慧机械产业趋勢及商機，協助台商拓銷美國外銷市場及產業佈局。So without further ado, let's now welcome the president of AMT, Mr. Douglas K. Woods. Mr. Woods, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Doug Woods, president of AMT, and glad to be with you today to talk a little bit about what the U.S. market trends are showing, especially in the manufacturing technology space and the opportunities for smart manufacturing and smart machines in this post-COVID period. So I think some of the best places to start would be to give you a perspective on where really we've seen things change relative to orders. So I think taking us to orders would be the best place to do a little bit of a walkthrough. And we came into the year, starting in 2019, taking a look at 2020, our forecasters had predicted that we would actually be within about $1 billion of the best numbers we've been at in the last decade or two for machine tool orders. And that quickly changed, as everybody knows, come about March, when the COVID pandemic really started to affect the overall businesses in the United States. And the forecasters at that point went from the orange line that you can see in the prediction there all the way down to the gray line, assuming that we would be off quite a bit, almost a 50% drop off in total orders. And as it turned out, as time went on, things weren't quite that bad, which is good. Maybe we were a little bit too pessimistic. And the reality is, come about September, when we take a look at where we're at from predictions, we're only going to be off somewhere in the 25 to 30% area, which is much better than what we had predicted. And in 2021, we're looking at a 40% increase in the market. Now, that still won't quite get us back to our 2019 numbers, but is definitely better than where we thought we'd be several months back. And so there's several things to keep in mind relative to these numbers when specifically looking at machine tools. So transactional machines, or those lower cost machines, are actually doing reasonably well as people have emptied their inventories and need to get some equipment in order to move production through. Also, as we usually see in these situations, the higher end machines are also doing well, because the higher end machines, typically those 5-axis machine or more complicated machines, are pretty much pre-allocated to programs that are ongoing. So whether they be in defense or in automotive, they're programs that typically people still need to capitalize for. So it's kind of those middle market machines that are having the most difficult time at this point. And it looks like, that's going to drag out a little bit into next year as we go forward. As we take a look at, some of the things, not all industries are actually having that dramatically difficult a time. And a good one to take a look at from a positive standpoint is what's happening in the automotive industry. So if you take a look at where we were just a few months back, we were tracking in April to be at about 8.2 million vehicles on a yearly basis, which aren't very good for U.S. automotive numbers. But if you fast forward up to August and take a look at where we're at, we're tracking now to be closer to 12 million vehicles. And so automotive has really started to move back into full production. You can see that, companies like General Motors that just recently announced a $71 million expansion for the transmission program, expansions in their casting and forging facilities, investments starting to really move forward in that space. And so that's a real positive when it comes to things that are happening in the automotive industry, certainly as they try to replenish inventories that have been driven down dramatically over the period of time where we had supply chain issues to be able to get things into the marketplace. Now, they're not the only ones that are actually doing reasonably well. So it's interesting to take a look at some of the industries that are really doing pretty well at this point. Material handling is really doing quite well at this point. And so you can think about, of course, the dramatic expansion of goods that need to be moved as people aren't necessarily getting out and doing all that commerce themselves. So the Amazons, the UPSs, the FedExes have substantially more packaging and material that they need to move. Also, people aren't going out to the stores in many cases to get those products. And so the deliveries are more having to happen to their homes. So automating the loading of trucks, automating the loading within the facilities, all the things that make it happen faster to move all this production has really driven up the capacity in the material handling space. And so that's a key market to take a look at also. Firearms you wouldn't think would be that big of an issue, but always when we have elections here in the United States and one party says that they're going to enforce tighter gun laws versus another party forces the gun sales to actually move up and down. And right now you can see them moving up dramatically. And so just since August, we've sold 1.8 million units, and that's a lot of units. That's a typical yearly amount of units that we've sold just in 8 months out of the year. And what that's really doing is driving a lot of capacity into the job shops and the contract manufacturers, which are where a lot of the machine tools that are sold in the U.S. get absorbed by the contract manufacturing market. So that's been a big one. Also, semiconductors. Semiconductors, from the standpoint, you think about all electronics products that are selling. People are building out their home offices because of COVID. They can't go into the office, so people are getting more supplies to put offices in all of their homes. You also have a lot of people then more focused on entertainment, their home more, so bigger TVs, more electronic equipment, gaming systems, etc. So the semiconductor and electronics industry have been up quite a bit. You can see some of that from the rather large investment that the Taiwanese Semiconductor Corp, TSC, has put in $12 billion expansion. And that's on top of some of the other expansions going on. A lot of the Apple suppliers are also putting investments back into the United States. So a lot in the Southeast, Southwest United States, a lot of manufacturing capacity being brought in. Renewable energy, speaking of the South and Southwest, just in Texas alone, there's been, almost $2.7 billion, I think it was, in total investment going into renewables. So here you are in the oil capital of the United States. Renewables are just going off the charts, and a lot of investments coming into the marketplace. Also, die and mold. A lot of die and mold had been outsourced over the years, and because of the supply chain issues created by the pandemic, a lot of that is coming back in. So, some plastic single-use things in the medical industry, packaging, the material handling that we were talking about, other molded components, a lot of that now is being brought back in where there's more control. So a lot more production equipment being sold in that space. And if you want some information on that, if you go to imts.com, look at our Spark offering, which kind of talks about all the new technologies and conferences, you'll see a piece that came out on Friday that talks more about that. So we take a look again, some of the areas that maybe aren't doing quite as well, which you need to build into your playbook as well as, of course, all the things that are happening in the service-based industry. And so the restaurants, hotels, entertainment areas, those are still dramatically hit and they're going to be an issue for some time. And, obviously the airline industry is a big one for manufacturing and it's going to be down for some time. There's a few bright lights there, the space industry, SpaceX, and what's Astra's doing well, some people, Grumman, that are doing well, but it's very focused because Boeing is still a little bit of a drag on the whole airline industry as well because of the 737 MAX, but also there's just not enough aircraft in the field at this point. So really got to take a look at which sector you're going to focus on. And, some of the durable sectors are still, relatively hard hit and going to be coming out of this slowly. The government is, of course, trying to react to that. And so if you just take a look at some of the investments that we've been making over a period of time, we can start to see some pretty large investments. Our phase one response that came out, back at the beginning of the pandemic was, $8.3 billion, which, seems like a lot of money, followed up by $100 billion for worker assistance for people that had lost their job, followed up by $2 trillion. Those billions start to look like really small numbers when you start talking about trillions. So a really big stimulus package that came out in our phase three, then further support for small businesses, and the second part of that third phase, another $310 billion. And right now, our Congress is negotiating on an additional very large bill, whether it's close to one end, which is 1.5 that the Republicans are looking for, or over $2 trillion that the Democrats are looking for. There's a large package still to come in. And these will definitely spur the economic recovery and continue the return as we've been seeing it going forward. So positive support coming in from the government. And we step back and take a look at all this and go, well, what have we learned from this process? What's it going to change about the landscape that we're in manufacturing? And the first is that we were really at high risk with where we had our supply chains. And we didn't do the appropriate steps that we probably should have done to buffer and built in duplicity and control over what would happen in supply chain issues like a pandemic. And so now that's a much bigger issue in the United States, and I think you're going to see quite a bit of change. Now, obviously, it's important from an economic standpoint. It's also important from a national security standpoint. So you're going to see much more happening with reshoring. You're going to see a lot more nearshoring because of our agreement we have with Canada and Mexico. And so the USMCA agreement, so there's going to be more commerce happening both nearby, so things coming to Canada and Mexico from an investment standpoint in manufacturing capacity, but then also foreign direct investment, just like we were talking about with the Taiwanese semiconductor. There's going to be companies just setting up operation to be closer to the consumption market, and the U.S. continues to be a major consumption market. You're also going to see now model changes, as people aren't able to do business the way they used to. You'll see things as manufacturing as a service. And so a lot of different ways of people to actually change the dynamic of how they bring manufacturing and manufacturing services and how they get remuneration or compensation for putting their equipment into facilities, or people utilizing equipment in a way that kind of spreads out the cost and the risk. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation. And then what's also good, depending on the industry that you're in, automation and some of the transformative technologies that we're going to be talking about a little bit later today are still selling very well in these times of a recession. These are things that people really identify as the key things that will bring them out of a recession. They're technologies that in many cases allow them to accelerate productivity, get to market faster. And so many of the technologies in the transformative space are doing quite well and will be ones to focus on. And so when we talk about what is it that people really focus on, where is the industry going, what do we talk about when we talk transformative technologies? The utopia for manufacturing, what everyone wants is if you could just get what you want, when you want it, where you want it, the way you want it, that's the perfect scenario. That's what everybody wants. And so that's the utopia everyone's driving to. And we can start to see how the technologies that are out are actually starting to drive that movement. And so you look at some of the key ways that can happen. Mass customization. So it used to be in the old days, the production lines made, the original in the US, kind of Ford just making a lot of black Model Ts. And of course, over the years, we've changed quite a bit and it's gotten a lot better, but people want to be able to have economic order quantity of one, where they can basically have the price of mass customization with their singular product being very unique. In order to do that level of mass customization of your product, it requires smarter and smarter and smarter factories. You need more automation, you need more intelligence, you need more data, you need more agile. And so there's a huge investment then being driven into smart factories to accommodate that customer and consumer need for mass customization. And then also to make that really work efficiently, you've got to bring everyone up to a new skill level. And so figuring out how these technologies can be leveraged in order to help the worker and to drive the transition that we need, it's really kind of interesting to see the democratization of innovation. These tools are allowing very small companies or old line companies or new people getting into the field to very quickly ramp up their skills and capability because of the availability of these online AI, machine learning, other skills and technologies we're going to be talking about. And so it really gets a bigger group of people that can get into our industry and help build those smart factories and allow the mass automation. And so interesting to watch all of these come together. Don't expect you to read the details on these graphs. I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but the main point here is on the left-hand side, what we're talking about here, and this is data we put together for people some years ago that I brought back out for this to just show the relevance of why things are happening now. And economics drive what's actually happening and the movements that you can see in the marketplace. And so on the left-hand side, you see the elasticity of price of robotics. And so as the volumes go up on that y-axis, what you're seeing is the price continue to drop as you look at the x-axis. And you can see it scaling up as more and more people get into using robotics. And so it's not just the main industrial people, so people like Amazon and others getting enormously into the use of robotics in their facilities are really driving the price point way down for the robotics. And you see a similar thing on that top right. And that's something we had done some years ago, taking a look at European major manufacturers, robotics and users of them. And actually the price point in those countries for robotics from 1990 to 2005, I know it was a while ago, but that continues to drive down. I brought that out because I thought it would be relevant. And if we look in the middle at the bottom, the cost of sensors are key in collecting information and technology. And again, dramatic drop off in the price of those sensors. And over in the bottom right, we're talking about internet connectivity, disk drive prices, switch storage prices, transistor prices, all dropping. And what that's doing, back to the economics of all these things, the economics drive the solution. And if the solution points get to where it's economically feasible, you see dramatic expansion. And the dramatic expansion has happened in the enabling technology spaces. And so the industrial internet, things from cloud computing, which is the storage and the ability to do processing in the cloud, edge computing, 5G, the low-cost sensors, battery technology to allow edge computing, all these things have made them very affordable for many, many people to get into and leverage and use to change the dynamic of what they're doing in their factory. And what they're really allowing is us to do a much better job at accelerating the transformative technologies. And these are the ones that I guess, people get really excited about. They're the real leading edge. So in generative design, augmented reality, additive manufacturing, we're doing artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's just so many new things in a transformative space that can leverage those enabling technologies that are going to then accelerate these new transformative technologies. It changes the way we do manufacturing. It changes the way the users of our manufacturing technology intend to set up their factories and use their factories. It changes the way that we make our equipment and our technology for our customers to utilize. And again, these things now are at the price points and at the technology point in development where they're being much more rapidly utilized. And we'll talk through some of the ones that I think are kind of more interesting. But I think the starting point for all that is just keeping our eyes on the most important thing is what's happening in the area of data. I mean, the core of all these things is what's being driven off of data. And so having open standards so it's easy to grab data and be able to use it effectively, thinking of the trillions and trillions of sensors that are now out there creating data, and we have to be able to grab and utilize that data, and being able to now leverage the cloud to actually store that data and actually process that data really starts to change the dynamic. It's that data that drives action. And so keeping in mind that the core of all these things that are happening in the transformative space really drives off of having clean, structured data and your ability to actually allow the end user as well as yourself to get structured, open source data so that you can drive actions is going to be key to our ongoing future success. So just some things to take a look at. And what I thought I'd do is kind of throw out some different names of companies doing interesting things in these spaces. And so these aren't the only people in these different sectors we're going to walk through, but just some, giving you a quick perspective. And they change the companies all the time that I put in my presentations. There's interesting people doing things all the time. But it just helps you understand a little bit better who's doing what kinds of things, and are they people I maybe haven't looked at before. So we talk about AI and machine learning, and people use those interchangeably, but let's just talk about the AI space, and we'll say it includes machine learning and deep learning for the moment. Preferred Networks is a really interesting company that was started up with some folks, big investments coming in from Fanuc and as well as Hitachi. And so they really focus on doing some things with AI and machine learning in the robotics and machine tool area. That's what makes them a little bit unique, because it's not typically one of the places that really cool, super high tech. So this is, it's a group out of Tokyo as well as operations in Berkeley, California, doing some things to really drive some deep intelligence systems that are driving, robotics and machine tools. So a really cool company to take a look at. Orsaro actually is kind of a little bit different twist. What these guys are doing is leveraging machine learning and AI to drive some unique vision solutions that go into robotics so that you can actually change what a robot does. They want to make a robot even more functional and more standalone usable in a facility. So they're really doing some really great things with vision and AI to break the limitations of robotics away and actually create more flexibility for robotics system. Cloud Minds, on the other hand, is kind of a little bit one of those things that might seem a little bit space agey. I mean, their concept is having a network, a secure network that you can have robots from all over the world connected into, which will be sending up their information into the cloud, where their AI algorithms will actually take a look at functions that robots are doing, thousands and millions of robots, and allow those algorithms to figure out the best processes to allow common functions to be done, and then feedback information to optimize how those robots actually operate off of all of that learned data. So a really interesting company doing some very interesting things, kind of changing how you use information that's available from crowdsourced information to change what you're doing at your facility. So CloudMind's an interesting one to watch in that space. When it comes to things in advanced automation, or call it cognitive automation, the ability, when we say cognitive automation, the ability of the automation to make certain decisions on its own based on information that's collected, know certain things it can do without manual intervention. So that's cognitive automation. So advanced automation, and just three different companies, different types. I mean, Festo is a company that I'm sure you've all heard of. Really great company. I mean, they're doing a lot of things in the industrial automation space with sensors and pneumatics. But what's really interesting, I think, about what Festo is doing, they've got some biomimicry systems that they've done. So it's really innovative. So they've done this thing with the bionic learning network. And so leveraging what they see, how a bird works or how the spine of a whale is built down, changing the way that they build robotics or what they do with autonomous vehicles, and things just out of what is in nature that they translate into engineering and build into unique products. So really interesting in that automation space. Fanuc, of course, everyone knows about them, everything from factory automation, robotics, the robo machines, and they talk about their field system, Fanuc, intelligent edge, drive systems. They're doing unbelievable things and really have some unique focus in what's happening and the new cutting edge of technology with robotics, which are always one to watch, but core player, a little bit different than Bright Machines. So Bright Machines is a name you might not heard of. It's from some bright people that kind of broke off from Autodesk and started their own company. And they're applying computer vision, machine learning, cloud computing to actually robotics and product assembly. So they're looking at how to automate product assembly systems and inspection systems. And they've kind of got a unique solution of creating a micro factory or integrated standardized components that actually you can take and easily program to solve your automation problems. And so you can build up your own micro factory from their templates of automation that they've driven this, learning systems into. So really neat company to take a look at and watch as they develop. When we talk about generative design, in the generative design space, of course, Autodesk is one of the people doing some of the most interesting space out of anybody. So they've got the start in having 3 different main sectors, which I think helps them a lot. So they're in media and entertainment, architecture, as well as being in manufacturing. And when you're in those and kind of getting into gaming and dealing with GPUs, and they're able to use what they learn from driving in the media space and the architecture space into the manufacturing space. And the generative design space is really, really important to us as we start to evolve what we do with engineering, and we need to use this computer power to iterate designs. Instead of trying to design everything from scratch, you just put in parameters based on weight or size or function or material. You build in the components that are the parameters, and then you let the computer run millions and millions of cycles of options to figure out the best way to fit an engineered solution into what it is you built the parameters for. And so Autodesk, the Fusion 360 product, is a great way to go do that. Also, if you take a look at PTC's Creo, parametric modeling system, same thing. They've got some unique experience in additive manufacture, generative design, augmented reality, smart connected design. So Creo is PTC's product in doing that. And again, maybe a smaller player not as familiar with, Entopology. Entopology is interesting that their name comes from the combination of any topology to no topology. And basically what their meaning is, look, we're really giving you design freedom. Design what you want, the way you want it. We're not going to constrict you. We're going to make a very easy way to build our generative design model to allow you then to iterate, again, the product you want by putting in the constraints. You put the constraints in and let the software package build off of an AI system, which is then driving all kinds of design options that you to take a look at the best one to fit your actual original constraints. So a really interesting field, especially as we have more and more people aging in this industry and less of that engineering prowess around to kind of have a way to capture some of that and let the computer systems help us out a little bit. Augmented reality. Augmented reality, I think, again, really genius from a standpoint. It does start to democratize what we can do in education and learning. And this is really important in this COVID time when you can't get out and do the things you want to do before, you want to go do some training. You can't dispatch service people to a location. You're trying to figure out how do you help an end user do some, service work on a piece of equipment. How do you help some people who don't have a lot of experience be able to come up to speed very quickly? And, in the US, we're looking at the next decade having about 3.4 or 5 million manufacturing jobs opening up and only about 1.4 or 5 million people to fill it. We need to use tools like augmented reality to drive that. And some of the companies that are doing that, Vuzix is a really interesting company. They come from my hometown, Rochester, New York, which means they're really good at optics. Kodak, Xerox, Bausch & Lomb, all from Rochester, New York. And Vuzix has leveraged that. They're one of the few people that are really designing their own optic set. So they've got their own optic set, their own smart glasses manufacturing, and they really do have their own display engine, which is unique. But they also work together with people like Upskill. So Upskill, oddly enough, happens to be in my current hometown of Vienna, Virginia. And they've been out for quite some time now and have a really good product set. They've got an enterprise platform for augmented reality, which is being utilized by a lot of Fortune 100 companies. And so they really have the key platform pieces, and they'll get hardware from other folks to come in and solve their problems. Altair, again, throwing out some new ones that maybe you haven't heard of before. They're in Santa Clara, California, and they pioneered something called augmented interactive reality, AIR system. So what they have kind of got this augmented space that they've created in their visualization systems. And they've got the Smart Glasses platform and a complete suite of AR products that kind of are built off of that. So they've kind of integrated an augmented solution into kind of their own platform, which is pretty unique in their space. So Altair is another one that you might want to be taking a look at. When it comes to additive, of course, this is a space that's going crazy out there. I think some years ago, people didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and it's really turning out to be quite a big deal. Globally right now, revenues for additive manufacturing for public companies in 2020 are about $3.1 billion. And that's almost double from 2015. And so it really, people wouldn't be making those investments. Sales wouldn't be that if they're not really making inroads. And so definitely something you have to take a look at. There is some impact that's having in the manufacturing space, and it will continue to have an impact. So again, a couple different ones to take a look at here. If we start with 3DO, probably a small one you haven't heard of. This is how unique players can get into the marketplace. So these guys really had some unique proprietary production metal 3D printing technology. And initially they found that there wasn't equipment that was really out there that could do what they needed. So they started inventing their own equipment. These guys even got to where some of the robotic applications, do some of the finishing work that needed to be done, wasn't as good as what they needed. They invented some of their own end-of-arm effectors and software with the robots to refine the process. These guys have not only figured out how to make some of the equipment, but they've also gone into production, high volume production of stainless steel parts, where they can really prove out the capability of higher volume productions in stainless steel additive, and then leverage their IP and their actual technology in the additive space. HP, a company that you know and know well, certainly has a ton of experience when it comes to jetting. So inkjet printing is what you would normally think of, but they've turned that into multi-jet fusion technology, as well as what they've done in their metal jet technology. So both technologies leveraging their jetting technology, and they really become very dominant in this space. So, the Xeroxes and HPs are in this space, as well as a brand new company like 3DO, and one of those middle market companies like Desktop Metal. And Desktop Metal, you probably know them, metal and carbon fiber additive manufacturing. And what really makes these guys kind of interesting that I wanted to point out is they recently had an IPO, and their IPO valued their business at about $2.5 billion, and that threw off over about $500 million of investment that Desktop Metal could use into R&D and doing new innovations. And that's the interesting about this space. Additive manufacturing has been around for 30 plus years, but it's in the last few years, as these companies have gone public and gotten huge investments into them, that they've been able to leverage those investments to do a massive amount of work in the R&D and lab space and accelerate what's happening with their product technology into the mass market and production market. So it's not just a prototyping only technology. Additive manufacturing is going to be a long-term play in changing how people get their products made. If we continue taking a look down this space and we talk about digital twins, another really interesting one, Gartner is a company that does a lot of research and data analytics as to what's going on in the industry. They looked at the market for digital twin to be $26 billion by 2025. That's an average growth rate of almost 40% per year in digital twin. And again, digital twin, what we're talking about is models that are able to create the true kinematics to actually be able to have not just a simulation on the screen, but that simulation, whether it be the valve, the cylinder, the pellet movement, the thrust or force, all of those correct physics built in to the model, so that if you're trying to test out your logic on your Allen Bradley or PLC system, if you're trying to look at the material movement, even if you're looking at tooling wear, you're actually able to look at the real things happening in a simulated mode and speed that up and actually see what's going to happen over a period of time to save you a lot of prototyping and testing, or to allow you to finish doing work, perhaps if you're building a large system, to actually be able to ship the system, finish programming your logic with your engineers in-house without the system being on your floor, and then be able to put that software into the machine on the customer's floor because you're able to do the final proofing while the machine was in delivery. Really valuable. Hexagon is in the space. Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, of course, a lot of things that they do in the software and sensors, manufacturing innovation of driving data. They've used that with some of their acquisitions in software to build out a full digital twin platform. PTC that we talked about earlier with their Creo package, they're also in the digital twin area, and they've been pioneers. Again, their IoT space, their augmented reality space, their generative design space, really put them in a great spot to be able to leverage build out of things that are happening in digital twins. And Siemens, everyone knows Siemens. Siemens actually has got a really robust digital twin product. It's one some of my friends in the automation space have used and used effectively to be able to do true test of their automation systems virtually before having to finish things out on the floor or to test things before they fully build out, which saves a lot of prototyping. The things to take a look at there in the digital twin space. Now, that was a lot about some different technologies and things that are happening in the technology space. I think there's some things that I'm going to call game changers that really have to keep in mind as well, which are, going to be changing the landscape overall. And the landscape that we're talking about now is manufacturing as a service. And so Protolabs is a company in the United States that has a capability to do metal stamping and forming. They can do CNC machining. They can do additive. They have all the capability to rapidly bring your work in. So they're a huge contract manufacturer that has great systems where it's almost like an Amazon. You call up with your product, you send them a file, they are able to process your file very quickly, figure out what piece of equipment to make on, and have very rapid turnaround times for your product. And so companies like Protolab change the landscape of who your customer might be when you're in the manufacturing technology space. So Protolabs, if they were to franchise like a McDonald's, and you could imagine them with a very standardized system to turn product around very rapidly with the systems and the throughput to do it seamlessly on their floor, it really changes who the customer might be buying hundreds or thousands of machine tools to solve a problem. Xometry is another company that's also very interesting. They're taking a look at all the unused capacity of machines that already exist. So whether that be capacity at a contract manufacturer or an aerospace company or automotive company, they try to aggregate the equipment that's not being used, get that equipment into their system, and then figure out how to make that available to people at a discounted rate. So if you imagine people that have machines that are maybe not used on the second shift, and Xometry collects information on that equipment, creates the profiles for it, goes out to the marketplace, and is able to aggregate, buy a lot of that at a discounted price, and then get people that want to have a product made that they then can dispense through their system directly to individual facilities that have that equipment and have the products turned around. The infrastructure to do that is quite complex and sophisticated, and what it does is use up a lot of capacity, which helps people absorb manufacturing overhead and makes manufacturers more profitable, which then allows them to buy more equipment. So again, a change in thinking about how equipment goes to market and how people monetize the equipment that's on their factory floor. Another big one, of course, you have to think about when it comes to selling machine tools in the manufacturing technology space is electronic vehicles and autonomous vehicles. And again, you recognize most of these names: Waymo, Google offshoot, BYD, Build Your Dreams, major Chinese player both in the battery space but also autonomous vehicles. Elon Musk's Tesla totally changed the marketplace of what people think about when they think about an electronic vehicle. And companies like Local Motors, you might not know as much, but have actually, developed an entire industry also in the microfactory space. But by looking at how you crowdsource solutions and become competitive rapidly, being able to leverage all of the talent that's available on the internet and bring it into solving problems, and then using microfactories in different locations to make just what you need, where you need it, when you need it. So this array of companies actually are the players in the market, but what we have to think about in our space is the combustion engine continues to kind of go down as people do electronic vehicles. All those components in the transmission, all those components in the engine, the blocks, the heads, the cylinders, the connecting rods, all that starts to go away. Of course, there's different electronics and systems and braking and steering and all of the systems for navigation. Those are all great, but you have to be able to change to what those are. So this is a huge change in overall manufacturing. And those companies that used to be making blocks and heads and connecting rods and transmission components, gears and those things, they're going to need to get into some other business, which is a business then that maybe is going to be disrupted because they need to find some marketplace as well. So you have to think about how many platforms are coming out from these people, how many people are announcing new programs like VW, like Ford, and it's going to change what the amount of equipment going in for the traditional automotive area. So again, just things we need to consider and take a look at overall when we look at the overall manufacturing picture. And we think about all those things. I know there was a lot of ups and downs and backs and forth, and people talk about, do I need to do these things with transformative technology? Do I need to go into new markets? Do I need to worry about what's happening with additive? And I started out as a quality engineer when I started out my career. And, Dr. Deming was a guy that everyone liked to follow. And he had a saying that I think is great for this application. And the fact of the matter is, it's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. In other words, you can choose not to change, but it doesn't bode well for your future. This is a great time to take advantage of all these technologies. As I mentioned, what's happening with the enabling technologies that are driving transformative technologies. It really creates the opportunity to get in the marketplace and do things that are unique and leverage these transformative technologies that many of the companies I talk to, many other companies that are in this, to position your companies for success. And you understand a little bit what's happening in the U.S. market, where we see the trends starting to come back and stabilize as we go into 2021. We talked about some of the markets in automotive and certain pockets of aerospace, the things that are happening, kind of in firearms and semiconductors and material handling, to get a flavor of some of the things that are happening in our marketplace here in the U.S. And hopefully all those things, when you put them together, help you get a better understanding of what's going on, and certainly where you have an opportunity to build out your business and leverage the technologies, and certainly move into one of the bigger consumption markets in the world. So I hope you found that helpful, and you have a great day, and I very much appreciate my opportunity to speak with you here.
Thank you, Mr. Woods, for your insightful presentation regarding the machine tools industry in the United States. 谢谢 Mr. Woods 会长详尽且不藏私的介绍及说明了机械产业的现况。Mr. Woods, there are a couple of questions that I would like to ask you. So, based on your presentation, you mentioned that the manufacturing tech consumption had slightly recovered compared to the statistics in May. And you also pointed out that a prolonged recovery will stretch well in 2021. In addition to this, I understand that there are lots of relief packages in the States. So the question is, do you see any opportunities for Taiwan's machine tool industry manufacturers to go into the market in 2021? And for machine tools, do potential consumers exist? Let's say maybe in the industry of aerospace, auto parts, medical equipment, or die and mold. Can you share some of your insights?
Yeah, you're exactly right on some of the initial ones that look to be most promising. Of course, we're expecting, starting in a little bit in reverse order, aerospace industry, which has been pretty hard hit, to start making some inroads. And certainly in the overall defense and aerospace area, defense aerospace is actually doing reasonably well and is a pretty big market, and also the satellite market and space market. So those sectors within aerospace are doing well and are ones to certainly to focus on. I think it'll take another few years before the overall aerospace comes back in from the impact of Boeing getting back into their full production. But when those start to change, because they've been down for so long, I think there'll be a rapid retooling that's going to go on that will be great. Automotive industry is going to continue to increase. We talked about new platforms that are going to be coming out. A lot of the moves into some of the electronic vehicles are driving some, new platform work, and there's a lot of capacity that's missed. They're still filling pipelines. There's still issues of getting things shipped in from, around the world to fill out the supply chain issues. So automotive will continue to be strong, as will automation and material handling. There's just, so much is going on right now, moving product and getting product moved with less people from more locations, whether it's from ports, whether it's from airports and planes, whether it's from depots, and also packaging so that it could be more quickly brought to the final consumer. It's a massive amount of automation technology that's going in. So, and I don't expect the semiconductor space and electronics to change much for any period, any short-term period either. That one's going to continue to expand as people are still going to be doing work from home. Buildings will then start to retool for people if they're going to bring them back into offices, what the new offices need to look like, how they're going to be set up, how people actually operate. And so those will be good. And medical, which hasn't in the past been a huge portion, sometimes only 14-15% of the overall market for manufacturing technology in the US, is going to be a much more aggressive growth area. People are going to want to obviously now focus more on that, but also there's going to be an issue of internalizing more of that manufacturing, like we've talked about with the reshoring in the medical space, which will drive that up more quickly, especially as people look at how you ramp up to vaccinate and create therapeutics for huge numbers of people in very short periods of time. The logistics and equipment to do that in that field is going to cause tremendous investment.
Thank you very much for your explicit analysis. I also have another question here, which is, since the outbreak of COVID-19, it has affected the supply chains greatly, causing supply disruption. How do you see the changes in the deployment of the manufacturer's production network?
There's been enormous focus on what to do with improving the supply chain. This is true from all the way back in the time of the tsunami in Japan and the effects that that's had on shipping. So it's not a new thing. It's just accelerated at an exponential rate after the pandemic. And what it's really meaning is you're seeing more and more manufacturers actually doing foreign direct investments. So setting up for the first time in the United States. When they're major manufacturers that are doing that, what ends up happening is the support supply chain for those manufacturers tends to come along with them. So the amount of direct investment coming into the U.S. is enormous. And as I was mentioning, because of the USMTA, the United States, Mexico, and Canada trade agreement, now there's a lot more open nearshoring. So Mexico's got enormous investments happening in it, very high growth. Same thing in Canada. And so if you look at Canada, Mexico, and the United States together as one market, there's an enormous amount of reshoring, nearshoring in those two locations, as well as foreign direct investment to get close to the consumption market in the United States. And that was started, again, as I mentioned, some years ago. But right now, I think there's almost a mandate starting from all of the major manufacturers to get better control over their supply chain, to be able to turn on handling consumer needs more quickly because they have better control of their supply chain, and at a minimum, diversifying their supply chain risk and moving it into multiple different countries. And certainly the U.S. becomes one of those attractive countries if you weren't manufacturing here in the past, because now you have a situation where you're very close to the consumption market. And that reduces your overall costs, the taxes, the shipping, the time delay. And many people are finding that even though the labor costs are higher in the U.S., when you're putting more automation in, that starts to become a non-issue, and more investment is coming into the U.S.
Thank you once again for answering the questions. 再次感谢线上参与的企业先进今天参加线上的国际论坛。我们的活动在这边圆满的告一个段落，希望今天大家都有满满的收获。也邀请各位扫描荧幕上的 QR code 来填写电子问卷，提供我们您宝贵的意见。在未来，台湾精品还会办理许多线上的记者会及发布会。如果不想错过台湾精品系列的活动，可以帮我们按赞、分享、订阅台湾精品的 YouTube 频道，并且开启小铃铛，通知您最新的活动哦。再次感谢各位企业先进今日的参与，祝福大家身体健康，心想事成。我们下次见。And so, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our online forum for today. We appreciate your participation, and we also hope that this event has helped you gain a better understanding of the new trends developed in smart machinery industry. Please feel free to scan the QR code and fill up the post-event to help us improve our services. In the next few weeks, we will hold more online conferences, and you are more than welcome to join us again. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on our YouTube channel and click the bell icon to follow us. You can also follow our Facebook fan page for more latest activity information. Please stay healthy with Taiwan Excellence. Have a wonderful day and see you soon.